There is a little bit of Photoshop work to get images ready for this process, but it's not a lot. You could take any image, or it could even be a drawing that's been scanned. I just need a digital file to bring to the process. So this is what I hope it looks like when I'm done. The Photogravure is the monochrome black and white. The color part is going to be inkjet. I'm going to take the color part away, and what's left here is a monochrome image that will go to the Photogravure plate.
Is there anything specific you have to do to the file to make it ready to print?
I really like in these Photogravures to have a really rich black. I want that full value range from a pure paper white, where essentially no ink will fall, to the really deep, dark blacks.
So you use another software to print?
I do. It allows me to manipulate the mix of inks in a printer. And this is essential for using the Cone Editions set of piezography inks. We have a modified Epson printer here that has been set up with a proprietary set of inks. These are custom-made inks for this printer, for this process. What I love about Print Tool, you can manipulate an image directly on the page. It's just super user-friendly once you get to this point. Let me just center it here. Margin on top and bottom, left and right. I have a good couple inches on the bottom. So one key piece here is that the image is flipped horizontally. You're going to be flipping in the printing process. So if you want it to look like it is on the screen, you have to flip it once and then twice, and then it's back to normal. I make another choice of a curve that is similar to what people call ICC profiles for photo printing. It basically controls the amount of ink and the mix of inks that are going to come out onto the plate. Because these plates are photosensitive, just to be careful and cautious, I turn the lights out in the room. We buy these plates from Cone Editions up in Vermont, the company that I mentioned earlier. We keep them in black plastic, just as you would photosensitive photo paper. Type of plate is called a Green Mountain plate, I guess a reference to Vermont. They all come with a very nice protective... Exactly. So this is just to protect the surface of the plate because we don't want any scratches or dents on these plates. I do reuse this piece of plastic for my ink mixing. I'm loading this plate directly into an Epson printer. This is a steel-backed sheet of photopolymer that's now going to accept that image that we were just looking at. I put my hand on top here and press the down arrow. Sheet of photopolymer sensitive material loads right into the printer as you're seeing it there. This is one of those like jaw-dropping, awesome moments. So I'm turning on the exposure unit. Basically, it's a light counter. It's a little computer with a photosensitive diode inside. You can actually see where that sits over in the corner. And that measures the amount of light that the plate is going to get. So I know exactly how to set that exposure up. I'm bringing the plate over now. It's really a very simple process of just hitting one button on the printer. The plate starts to fall out. I just make sure I'm here to catch it. But you can see the image has received the ink. Goes right in the middle of the platform here. I lower the box. We want to protect ourselves from UV light. And then I simply come over here and I set up the exposure. And I've got some presets here. This 800 units is what we use for the initial exposure. That's been calibrated. The machine is ready now to expose that plate with 800 units. So it asked me one more time, are you sure that's the 800 that you want to give it? And I say yes by hitting the check mark. And it starts exposing that plate with UV light. So this part of the studio we call Middle Earth. This is where we're going to wash that plate out, 72.5. You can see this is completed. And there's our plate in its first.
Dark.
This stage needs to be timed. Time it to 3 minutes. Water goes on. And the first step is just to get the ink off the plate, because that ink will gum up my massaging process, which is coming next. So it's a regular painter's pad, and we're getting nice, clean, fresh water onto the plate. So light pressure. You really don't want to scratch the plate. Circular motion, and we're basically removing photopolymer where the dark areas of the image are, so that that part of the plate will hold ink in an intaglio process. I sometimes will go back and forth in a straight motion, or switch it up 90 degrees, or go back to circles. I'm just trying to mix it up so that I get that even, consistent massaging. So final stage, I just give it one more rinse, turn off the water, and let it drain. When I get to single drips, just give it a little.
I know how to do that.
I just use newsprint, just taking that excess moisture off the plate quickly. So I try to work with some speed here. I just want to get that water off, because water continues to develop the photopolymer and remove it. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm done with the development. Just standard. I turned this on about 15 minutes ago to get it hot, and it just sits here for 15 or 20 minutes for a thorough drying. So the plate has thoroughly dried now on the plate warmer. Even though I use it on the very lowest setting, it's still pretty hot. Probably. So this is now going to go back into the same UV exposure unit that we did the initial exposure in. This second exposure is to harden the plate. I need a very high level of UV exposure. Now we're using 3,200 units. So all I have to do is hit the little light bulb here, and it starts counting down. Well, here we have our hardened plate. This plate is so hard, it will stand up to inking and wiping and printing over and over and over again. So plate is now ready to be trimmed, and we have a handy-dandy special German plate cutter. I produce the best results with as much light as possible. I tell my friends, it's not that I can't see anymore, I just need more light. I've made marks on the plate where I want it to be trimmed to, and I've made those marks with a little X-Acto knife. I'm lining it up with the base of the cutter along those cut marks. My first cut with a nice 3/8 of an inch margin. And do that again along the top edge of the image. Really nice, even.
Beautiful, that border. Such a degree of precision is required for this.
And this will be my last cut. Should produce a nice square final shape with a nice clean margin around the image. As a final step is make sure that this very fine little burr on the bottom gets removed, because that will leave a mark on the press. We don't want that. This is the super fine. Run it along the bottom edge a couple times and it's gone. But I do one more thing to my plates, which is I round the corners just a little bit. This particular file I bought in an open market in Mexico. It's open market, and there was a guy running a little hardware store stand in the market, and he had these for like $1.50. I picked one up knowing exactly what I would use it for. It does two things. I like the look, but maybe more importantly, it prevents me from jabbing myself. That's pretty much it. Usually we call that very first print off of a plate a proof. So I've prepared some paper that's just barely big enough for this plate. This is Hahnemühle copper plate paper. It's 100% cotton rag paper, and it has a light texture on it. You'll see when I pull it out of the bag. But I've had it in this bag with a slight amount of water.
Oh, you made a damp pack.
I made a damp pack. When I'm done with a project, I'll just save whatever ink is left over. Our house black, I have what I would call a warm black, and this is where I've added like a sepia, a burnt umber, maybe a raw umber to give some warmth to it.
Why is this called Arctic Black?
It's a cool black, and one of the coolest places I know on the planet
Are you kidding?
are the polar regions.
Oh my God.
So this one's called Arctic Black.